Good afternoon. Thank you guys for joining us on this November 15th. If I could first get a motion to go into special session, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Up first, we have an approval of amendment number 2 to the agreement with Eastern Sports Management, LLC.
Councilman Oshar, you gonna read that?
I will.
Thank you.
Is it long?
No, well, it's your thing, man, it's your thing.
Madam Mayor, hereby move to approve amendment number 2 to the consultant services agreement with Eastern Sports Management LLC for the final phase of the development of construction documents for an indoor recreation facility at the former municipal stadium property. Deliverables of this phase will include final contract assignment with architect, complete building plans and specifications, finalized legal agreements for the construction and operation of the facility, and fundraising. Funding will be $500,000 from FY '21 general fund surplus.
Second.
Second by Keisha. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, up first today, we have a proclamation for Small Business Saturday.
Hold on. This is yours. Yeah.
Starts joining.
Okay, you take that.
Hi, ladies.
All right, we're good now.
So I do have a proclamation for Small Business Saturday. Whereas the city of Hagerstown believes that small businesses are the backbone of our local economy, generating jobs and improving the quality of life for citizens. The city of Hagerstown supports the efforts of local businesses and recognizes the critical role they play in our community. Small Business Saturday is a nationwide campaign that was created in November 2010 by the credit card giant American Express. It stimulates the economy growth locally for merchants by following the tradition of Black Friday. So with the support of the City Council, I, Emily Keller, Mayor of the City of Hagerstown, do hereby recognize Saturday, November 26th as Small Business Saturday and encourage residents to recognize and support small businesses within our community by shopping at these establishments on the Saturday following Thanksgiving. And I just want to thank you two for all that you are doing. Small Business Saturday, I've seen it all over social media. It's all over the website. You guys are doing an awesome job, so thank you for supporting our businesses.
Say something.
We have 25, as of today, small businesses in downtown Hagerstown that have signed up to share their deals and discounts, which we're very excited about. So I think it goes to show that our businesses, they want you as their customers. So please support them on Saturday, November 26th.
Thank you.
Good smiles and 1, 2, 3. Good work. Good smiles. 1, 2, 3.
All right, up next, we have a preliminary agenda review. If you guys have any questions, just stop me. We'll have our regular session on November 22nd at 7. We'll call the meeting to order, followed by an invocation, pledge to the flag. We're following the rules of procedure effective December 15th. Our meeting schedule for December will be December 6th and 13th. We'll have a work session at 4 p.m. December 20th, we'll have a regular session at 7 p.m., and December 27th, we'll have no meeting. We do have some guests that day, proclamation for World AIDS Day, and a certificate of appreciation for milestone anniversary recognition to boards and commission members. We'll then have citizen comments that can be in person, or you can submit them in email to councilcomments@hagerstownmd.org no later than 5 p.m. on November 22nd. Have an approval of the minutes. The consent agenda for engineering, we have replacement of deteriorated alley paving for $145,000, installation of new sidewalks on West Irvin Avenue prior to overlay, not to exceed $80,000. Under IT, we have citywide Office 365 software upgrade for $155,593.78. Under police, we have the AVCC annual subscription fee for LexisNexis for $18,961.90. For Public Works, we have a bulk diesel fuel and gasoline purchase for $471,170.03. Bulk diesel fuel purchase for $2,566,758.10. And bulk gasoline purchase for $959,432.30. For utilities, water, we have water service materials for $48,885.88. And fiscal year '23 chemical purchase for various vendors for $1,791,618.16. For wastewater, we have fiscal year '23 and '24 chemical purchase for $392,206. And Muffin Monster, JWC Environmental for $24,481. For unfinished business, approval of an annexation resolution for 2 Western Maryland Parkway, approval of an ordinance, the cable franchise agreement. Under new business, we have an introduction of an ordinance, Hub City Garage land acquisition, approval of a resolution authorizing financial incentive agreement between the City of Hagerstown and MCB Hagerstown LLC, approval of a resolution lease amendment with Maryland Watchworks, approval of letter of intent with the Maryland State Department of Labor and Education for the City of Hagerstown property located at 2-6 North Potomac Street, approval to reimburse Washington County for the community-based prosecutor for fiscal year '23, and approval of solid waste collection service fee increase. We'll have city administrator comments, mayor, council comments, and we'll adjourn.
And just to be clear, under new business A, that's the parking deck. That's not us buying a business called Hub City Garage.
You guys have any questions? All right. Up next on our agenda, we're supposed to have a discussion of the Robert W. Johnson Community Center with Secretary Holt, who's from the Department of Housing and Community Development. So just to give a little bit of background, Secretary Holt had reached out in October and wanted to have a discussion. He's been very dedicated to wanting to help the Jonathan Street community, and as this term is coming to a close with the election of a new governor, he wanted to see that through. So he had asked that we arrange a meeting with the Robert W. Johnson Community Center Board of Directors so he could see where things stand, how the city can help, what they can do more. And so we did invite them Sunday evening. We did get a response from the board that they were not going to attend today, that they wanted to have a future meeting. So in return, Secretary Holt is not here either. So because we were kind of prepared to have this discussion, we were talking earlier about the community meeting that was held at the Simmons Community Center just a couple weeks ago, and to do a recap of that, because we are having part 2 of that community meeting on Thursday night at the same Simmons Avenue Community Center. So I'll open it up to you guys on how you want to handle that discussion.
Well, I'll just start. I think for me, as I feel like probably the largest sort of outsider looking into the issue, simply because I wasn't able to attend a prior community meeting that the mayor and council had. I was out of town, and I know that that was a topic of conversation at that community meeting. That being said, I'm certainly familiar with our facilitating issues as they've arisen probably over the last 20 years. So if something, needed fixed or whatever, the city, I think I remember one year there was some improvements to the pool, like $25,000, and the city sort of stepped in and said, okay, we need to address that item. But these topics appear on our agenda, right? And in fact, we got another one here later this evening that's sort of a similar nature, where there is numerous conversations outside of the conversations that the public sees us talk about right here in this room. And I will say the same thing to all parties interested in this particular subject, that if the city is going to be an interested party in this process of facilitation and deliberation and resolution on any issues between the state and what is generally a private nonprofit operation, then for me, the best course of doing so is in the plain view of that public purview of this meeting setting. That's been my position through the deliberations of email communications among the various parties. I think that, Mayor, you were remiss in not stating that the email we got, response from the board was they would prefer to have that initial discussion, in closed setting. And so for me, that's just a non-starter, simply because I'm not the owner-operator of the facility. I'm not the state that has provided funding to the entity to partner to figure out how to improve operations or address repairs and things like that. I'm sort of like this third party that's been brought into the conversation to say, hey, we're the state and we'd like to sort of help, and the entity saying, hey, we've got this operation and we'd like to keep it going. And they're both looking at us saying, city, how can you make the two things meet? And the only way I'm gonna be able to make that meet and satisfy the concerns in a very plain and transparent way to the community that lives there is to do it in a public setting, so that everybody understands what our role is, what those other parties bring to the table, and how we can bring resolution to the issue that benefits the community. Like, that should be the end goal, not who gets to be in charge of what, but what things we do at the end of the day that benefit that operation, that then benefit the community. That's my 2 cents, as an outsider looking in.
Well, I think what we heard, and I appreciate all of you being here. I saw most all of you at the last meeting, and it's sincerely appreciated. The love for your community is evident, and for you to be here in support of what we're trying to accomplish and exactly what Councilman Alshire said, it's very valuable, so thank you for showing up. And everyone at that meeting had the same interest, that the community center needed to be open, that it was helpful to many of the members here. It was helpful to Takesha and Tiara, when they were younger, and that they wanted that for their community. And what everyone expects is that transparency. And I agree with you. I think that we have to hold these things in public and talk about it, because we all want the same thing. We want an active community center that is benefiting the kids and the parents and those that live in that community and those that travel into that community.
Yeah, hot like fire. So
You went to bed early last night. You said you did.
I did go to bed early. Just so I take and remove my feelings and emotions from a very personal, I feel personally about the community, born and raised in. I want to remove that and just say from this position as a part of this body, this is really, really, really sad that you're asked to come together and see how to be able to make things work within community and with the finances being provided, and neither show up. To me, that is just, I don't know how to explain or how to be an ambassador for the city nor the state when it comes to the Jonathan Street community if we can't have open, transparent, honest conversations. We all have feelings and emotions around all kinds of things. I just think that it is really, really unfair. I appreciate the people that did come out and that keep coming out and that keep showing up. And for those that feel as though that you're that elite, that you just get to say, yeah, we're not gonna meet with the city or state right now. We'll meet you after Thanksgiving. That's how can you have, and I'm asking this publicly and on record, but how can you have that type of spirit right now when we all need to be working with the spirit of collaboration together on behalf of the youth and the elders in that community? What's happening in that community is happening because there is no lighthouse. There is no one to facilitate community in that community right now. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of people going down there taking pictures. I'm sick of people acting like they're for the community. And when it's time, no one shows up, except for the true authentic leaders whose faces are known down there. And then they don't get the answers. They don't get the answers because everyone is constricted by these damn laws and rules of procedure. And in the meantime, there's a community suffering, and that's not okay.
Well, I'd like to echo those in the audience that continue to show up for the city and the community. I'm going to also remove personal feelings. As I served on the board at the center, I saw, the operations, how things work. And I also saw a lot of kids that came through there. But what's facts is that the center is not operational. There's no programs. The kids don't have a place to go in that area. And I'm looking forward to further public conversations where we can figure this all out to help those in the community. I mean, we do have other resources in the community. I think we should look into spending our energy in improvements to the Martin Luther King Center that's under the county's leadership. Also, look into the actual Parkview programs that happens at Sumans, and also Boys and Girls Club. I mean, we have other areas, but it's unfortunate as someone who is considered quote-unquote a wreck kid, and I cannot take my daughter there and show her where home used to be for me. And that's all I have to say.
And I think, like I said, I think that meeting that we had was that same common theme. We went to the community, that was our decision to go to the community and hear what they needed and wanted, because it's their community, they live there, they want their children to grow up there, and they want the community center to be operational. And that's what we all should want. And it's okay to talk about that in public. It is absolutely okay. And I am not in support of having any private meeting about this at all. I can go on record to say that. I think that it should be upfront.
Hi.
He is here.
Oh, okay, all right.
There
Here we go.
Please join us up here.
Good start. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, have a seat.
Thank you.
We're gonna start over.
So
Hi,
I think the
welcome.
general
Thank you for
gist-
joining us.
Thank you.
Secretary. We appreciate your
Sorry, the
time.
traffic was bad, the weather's,
No, we
Long
appreciate you,
drive.
we appreciate you being here.
thank you.
Yes.
So we've all made some fairly impassioned comments before you got here. And I'll sum it up with this. We, as a body, stand ready to partner and facilitate whatever measures need to appropriately take place so that whatever resources and interest the state has to direct to the center to improve the operations and openness and conditions and benefits that offers that community, in our community, we're ready to sort of take on participation in that conversation. We're not the owners of the facility. We're not the organization. We certainly understand that the state and the organization are sort of looking at the city to navigate and maybe mediate, some of that relationship to get from point A to point B. But I think all of us want to do that in the most transparent and open process as we possibly can, so that everybody in the community, understands what all the partners are trying to do to simply improve the conditions of what the community wants to see happen.
There are
I couldn't
many
have said any
members.
better. We're in complete agreement, and from the state's perspective, we want the facility open for the kids. We want it to be available to the community. We're very supportive of all the improvements in the Johnson Street neighborhood, and we're providing significant capital to achieve those results. I guess we got to a point where we wanted to make sure that there was collaboration and partnership and everybody working together for the same kind of goal. So when it felt like we needed to work more closely with city leadership to achieve that, that's, I think, when we started to focus on our relationship with the mayor and with the city council to achieve the kind of solidarity that you're talking about. So we're all on the same page. And, you know, I do think the next step is probably meeting with the board and ironing out whatever differences there are.
And we kind of recapped before you got here. We had a community meeting in the Jonathan Street community just a couple weeks ago, and then we're having a follow-up on Thursday. And a lot of the people that are here tonight listening were at that community meeting, and everyone's all on the same page. There's a lot of frustration of the lack of clarity of what's happening there, but everyone wants the center to be open and needs the center to be open, and it's a staple in that community. So we just kind of recapped, you know, that frustration that we heard over and over from the community, and I'm sure we'll hear again on Thursday.
Yeah. I mean, if I could put clarity behind the budget and the numbers, I can tell you this, that a state appropriation of capital dollars that's coming from the capital budget of the governor, that money is awarded with very clear conditions. It can't be used for administrative overhead. It can only be used for capital construction purposes. So there's no getting around that. So if there's fear that money is going to be going into the coffers of a community development organization and they're going to use it to pay salaries, that ain't going to happen. That doesn't happen. So every one of, I guess, sort of the partner organizations that's been involved, I think has been operating in the best interests of the community and the needs of the center. The money at this point hasn't been deployed, and I believe that from all sources there's about $1,200,000 that is fundamentally available to begin renovations, either to the building itself, the core and shell, or to the swimming pool, depending upon in what order, you know, the work should get done. And in addition to that, there's probably an additional $500,000 that the city would have at its discretion to utilize for whatever kind of improvements that the city feels is necessary. These are state dollars that have flowed. They've come from the governor's capital budget. They've come from our strategic demolition fund, our being the Department of Housing and Community Development. And they've come from, there's an African-American appropriation that the General Assembly has that I think $100,000 came out of. And there's an award to, I think it's called the Western Maryland CDC, that I think $400,000. So all of these, and then there's $450,000 remaining that went to Preservation Maryland. $50,000 of their $500,000 grant went for engineering and design work, and there is a report that was issued from an architect. So if you add up the 450 plus the 400 plus 100 plus 500, it's about $1.5 million to $1.7 million that is basically available to commence work. And there will be additional money to do whatever has to get done. So, you know, every year we operate on a fiscal year, we have a budget, we have appropriations, and we select from applicants the projects that we want to approve. We're right now in fiscal year 23, and we're putting together the fiscal 24 budget. The fiscal 24 budget will include, and when I say include, these items aren't line item earmarks for the Robert Johnson's Community Center, but there's money in our budget for strategic demolition, and that money will be part of what's available for improvement to the community center. So it's not a one-shot deal. It's going to be an ongoing multi-year deal, and I believe that there's support from Congressman Trone, who I think has offered through federal appropriations, maybe some ongoing operating support. We have very little support for operations, but we've just set aside, I believe it's $50,000 to pay the salary of an executive director. And so that's money that will be in the board's budget to hire an executive director and to go with some additional money that they have. And probably over a multi-year period, there could be a $50,000 appropriation to pay the salary of a qualified executive director. So there's, I think, substantial capital money, nearly $1.7 million available. And then there's this $50,000 that we've just awarded for the payment of an executive director. And there will be future appropriations. So, you know, I think the money's there. I think the will is there, based upon everyone coming here together today.
And unfortunately, everyone that's here has been at the community meetings, but are not a part of the community center board. The
I see.
community center board, so,
Joe's here.
I'm sorry?
Joe's here.
Oh, I'm sorry, there's one. I'm sorry. It's, Secretary Hall, my name's Takesha, and I'm
Hi.
born and raised. I came from the Jonathan Street community.
Hi.
I still have family that lives down there, and it's very difficult for me to sit as a part of this elected body and be an ambassador for the same community that I advocate for, because I have to try to figure out what side or how to correctly say what I want to say, right? And so as a mediator, I'm also a mediator. And I understand the conflict. And the conflict that is happening with the board of directors and the community is stopping anything. There is no community buy-in with the community board of directors right now. There's no community collaboration. I'm saying it on the record. These people that are sitting out here come to community meetings but have no idea what's going on in the community center. At one point in time, I ran the community center for 3 years. I ran the community center, I ran the swimming pool and the after-school program. We had an executive director. She made sure that we had the funding. I ran all the programs there. We had so many programs at one point in time that we had to look at other facilities. So I know that it works. I know that it can work. But we also utilized our entire community. We utilized the churches, and we utilized the school system and the elders in the community, and that's not happening. And I just want to be very clear and very honest and open.
I think it's important, I mean, for me, it's important to understand that this isn't rocket science. In other words, when I hear your summary of the funding that's available, I guess, you know, for me, I manage a small town, that's what I do, you know, in the, you know.
In real life.
Yeah, so, like, for me, I sit here and I hear, okay, we have capital funding, right, and we have operational funding. And it shouldn't be that hard to sit down and say, okay, these are the capital needs we have, these are the 12 items, right? And of these 12 items, they cost X amount of dollars, and we prioritize them based on their necessity, and also as they apply to the impact they have in terms of usership, right? And so the funding that you have available goes to address those items, you know, in a deliberate fashion, and sort of tick them off as you fix them and improve them and reopen them. And then the operations funding to say, okay, we prioritize that, and what do we need to operate, and what's the best course of that? The issue, however, is I feel like, you know, we're sort of on the outside of that, the city. I know that there are some directed our way, but we can't demand that those state dollars go in this order, right, for capital, or they go in this order for operations. So at some point, we have to sit down at a table with the board and with the state and with the city and say, okay, you know, how do we get to what that priority list is? How do we determine how to make sure that it's successful once they're completed moving forward, so that, you know, you're funding executive director operations and things, you know, in a successful manner to make sure that there are programs growing as you're explaining. And maybe the last thing I'll say about that is, like, for me, that's all I want to see happen. Like, I don't need to be at a ribbon cutting. I don't need to have my name on a plaque. So, like, that stuff, to me, I could care less. I just want to know, you know, how much money is there? You know, how do we sit down and come up with the things to make it work in the most effective way possible, implement those things, and then move on the
Sounds to
next
me
stage.
like the next step is in fact a face-to-face meeting with the board to see if you can work out these problems.
Can you help us with that?
We're failing.
wanna do
We're not doing really good. We're trying.
Yeah.
Can you help us facilitate
I-
that?
I-
Well, maybe a better question is, so when I deal with POS funding, so the state DNR, it issues POS funding, and the state says, which is program open space for parks, right? They say, every year you're allotted so much grant funding. I guess in my mind, I'm thinking, is there a spend time? Because the best thing the state likes to do is provide funding, which is great, but the state doesn't like to see an entity after it provides the funding to sit on it 2 and 3 and 4 years after budget cycle that it's been issued, right? And you haven't spent it yet. So I think the disconnect for me that I'm trying to marry is who is able to facilitate moving that train forward to get that funding spent in the timely manner that it's being provided. And I feel like the city isn't that entity. So who drives that and says you've got to spend it by X date or it goes back in the
Well-
budget?
From the standpoint of our dollars, which I basically would consider the 450 that remains with Preservation Maryland and the 500 that has been awarded to Hagerstown, we could claw that money back. We could basically say, you haven't facilitated your grant application, conditions. So we're gonna reclaim it, and we do that, not too often, but we do it every fiscal cycle. And I think, our interest is not in clawing any money back.
Right.
We
Ours
want it
either.
available.
We need it.
You need it, exactly.
I just feel
Places-
confused about where to spend the 500, because I feel like it's more of an operational, a directive until
no.
somebody has laid out, the things that it needs to go toward.
The 500 is for capital,
I
not
mean,
not
until
for
somebody
operational.
says, here are the things we think need fixed, I'm not really sure how we sort of
Yeah.
direct it in a manner to actually
Yeah.
make happen.
Yeah.
And that's hopefully what.
Because it
we
isn't
can
our
find
building, it's
out.
not our organization, it's not our operation.
So, I mean, sorry?
Hopefully that's, one of the things that we can find out once, when they're willing to meet with us
We said after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
after the holidays.
They sent me a copy of that letter to you, to the
Yes.
mayor.
Yes.
And so it seems like they've invited the meeting. They've suggested that it's better to meet sort of in a more private setting than in a public setting. And they want to do it after the Thanksgiving holiday. So, in answer to your question, we can certainly participate in that meeting. I can be present at the meeting and, maybe it'll help, I don't know. But, I listen to this body, and I listen to members of the board. Mr. Jefferson, is Mr. Jefferson here today? Yeah, Mr. Jefferson? Where are you? Okay. So, he made an inquiry to us, and I responded, and I sent you a summary of what the rules are and conditions related to capital money.
No, you didn't.
You didn't get anything from me?
No.
Well, I asked that it be sent. So, sorry about that.
Just to be clear, for the record, I'm here as a private citizen and not as a member of the board. But I appreciate the attention, but I'm not here as a member of the board, I'm here as a private citizen.
And this happens so much, Secretary Holt, that we can't, imagine me when someone stops me walking from home to City Hall and says, when is our pool gonna be fixed? When will the after school, me saying, I'm not a city councilwoman right now, I'm just walking through the community. I hear you, but in order for us to get to the different, what we need to figure out, I just think that enough of that, like enough, please, enough. Because it is creating way more conflict. If I get to pick and choose, no, I'm not Takesha the mediator right now, I'm Takesha the city councilwoman. No, like, we can't get it, we're born and raised in this community. Like, there's two of us, for the first time ever. serving together. Born and raised in the Jonathan Street community, our family still lives there. We don't get to say, I'm not a councilwoman right now when someone stops us at the grocery store and says, why isn't this happening in our community? We don't get to say that to the community that we still have to go to family cookouts at.
I understand. The disagreement has to be buried.
Yes.
I don't know how you do it. You have to come together with them, and which side prevails, if one side has to prevail over another, I don't know, but there's a division that has to be healed. And all I can tell you is that face-to-face communication is the best way to do it. And we have the resources available, and we have the will to direct those resources into the project. And
I think that's good for the folks that came this evening, that want answers, you know, that aren't part of the board or aren't running the center. I think it's good for folks, you know, at home and that came this evening to hear that, you know, because we're saying, you know, we want to facilitate. You're saying we've got the funding to make this happen. You know what I mean? And so at some point that train has to leave the station.
We were very happy that you reached out to us, because this has been, as you can tell by the community members, and emotions are high on this. And this has been an ongoing thing that we've heard for, you know, years now, that, you know, when is the center going to open? You know, what's going on? When she walks in the community, I mean, I walked in the community with her several weeks ago, and we got stopped probably 4 or 5 times with people asking, why isn't the pool open? Why isn't this happening? And, you know, we don't really have answers. So we were happy that you reached out about this, and that there is state money, and hopefully we can get a good partnership. I mean, we're here willing to help in any way that we can, but just needs to be a partnership.
you know, who's ever in control of the facility basically has the responsibility to operate it and to fix it.
I think that's completely fair.
That's where the onus lies.
So,
That's where the onus lies.
And can I just add a couple of things from a staff perspective, sir? Could you just clarify for everyone, when you talk about strategic demolition funds, that does not mean strategically
yeah.
demolishing
Demolishing.
anything?
Yeah, that's really a very poor title, I have to admit. It's sort of a catch-all to allow for site acquisition. You can acquire a site. You can demolish an old building that, you know, is a hazard. You could rebuild, you could stabilize and rebuild an old building using strategic demolition money. So design work, engineering, planning, all that is eligible use. To acquire the site is eligible. To repair, in this case, the core and shell and the interior is all eligible. And by the way, we provided at least $100,000 for the broadband hookup into the facility, and I think that's already been done.
Yeah, I don't know. And just another thing, I'm not sure when we talk about having a private meeting, and if this body would participate in a private meeting, I'm not sure that the Open Meetings Act would be satisfied, that would have a reason for that to be private. It would have to be a public meeting. Don't know that for sure, but I feel pretty comfortable in saying that. And then the last thing, when you approached us and your staff approached us about this topic, I made it as clear as I could make it in my position that we don't want to own, we don't have any desire to own that building. And as staff, we don't have the budget or the staff to program that building. We would look to the community to continue doing that for as far as we could see, with the assistance of us, like all of you have very, very well said in the last few minutes. That would be our, I think that would be our contribution. But we do not want to take over the building, take over the programming. That's the community's building. It's not, and programs, it's not ours. But we're here to help facilitate what that community needs to get that building rehabbed and to get programs operating in there again. So I just wanted, from a staff perspective, put that out there.
Well, I mean, I don't know whether you can enter into some kind of operating agreement or a memorandum of understanding that basically assigns to the board the operating responsibility, and so that they feel that they have a role, an important role on an ongoing basis there, and that you will provide, on your side of the agreement, you'll provide the capital money to do the repairs. So, I mean, it's a negotiation that has to end up in an agreement. If it doesn't end up in an agreement, then the whole thing falls apart. And, I don't know that you can ultimately prevent that. But I do think that if there's some reasonable approach through some kind of operating agreement or MOU, whatever you want to call it, where they are vested in a responsibility to operate that successfully, and that you will utilize capital that's forthcoming from the state or other sources, and you'll provide them with the resource to do the actual rehab. Maybe they'll agree to that.
I mean, the pass-through resource of the state.
Yeah, and I mean, there's 500,000, there's
Right.
450, that's state resources, there's 950, there's already been 50 spent on that engineering plan. So, I mean, that could pass to the city immediately. There's these sundry other dollars that I think the board has control of that, they can put into rehab work. Maybe they can dedicate that to the pool. So the 400 that went to the Washington County CDC, the 100 through the African American Appropriation Fund, that's $500,000. Maybe that gets allocated to the pool, and then there's the remainder that would flow through the city for the capital work, $2 million, $2.5 million, whatever it is. And that, but you enter into an agreement that, you'll get this work done by X time, and that board must hire an executive director, maybe subject to the approval of the mayor or the city administrator or whatever, or subject, not necessarily to the approval, maybe that will offend them, but maybe to the review, and then they're on board operating the facility, and the facility is rehabbed. And maybe there's a win-win for everybody there. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But I do think that if there's a concrete proposal that's sort of put on the table maybe after Thanksgiving, and I can attend the meeting, and we could even help facilitate sort of a MOU concept, we enter into a lot of those.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you guys have anything you want to add?
I just want to thank you for placing this on the agenda, and for the council and the city's support. The city has provided support for the center for many years, and I don't like the stigma that's shared, thanks to social media, about the city doesn't do anything. So I just want to thank everybody for the support with meeting the community. We said that in the beginning of this administration, that we would be doing these forums on a regular basis, and I think it's been helpful to get everyone's feedback, at least what's going on, challenges, successes. So I just want to thank everyone here in this room.
Yeah, I think,
Good.
thank you for coming and
Well,
clarifying,
no,
that there
it's-
is funding available to fix what's broken, and we don't need to the government doesn't need to take over things
Yeah.
in order to fix things.
Yeah.
I guess I put it in akin to the operations of the nonprofit entity of the YMCA, or the nonprofit entity of the Boys and Girls Club, or, you could go down that list. We're not out looking to take over any of their buildings or operations of any of these organizations. We're just looking to get the state's money into the buildings that they run to fix up things so it benefits the kids and families and grandparents and people that use them. That's it.
So
That's
I
that
think
point.
you're echoing everybody's feelings here. So let's try to work. I mean, I got a sense that they do want to meet I don't know about the public meeting rules. I don't know what constitutes a quorum and whether there could be a designee of the city council and of the mayor's office to meet in this private forum, so that would not violate any, rules. And we'll participate, we'll be present at the meeting, and we'll see if we can come up with some kind of concept that you all feel good about and maybe put something on the table.
And for me, that meeting doesn't have to be in this like stuffy governmental
Yeah.
setting. Like, for me, that isn't what needs to happen. You know, it could be walking around the facility, so I get a better understanding of, the perspective of those capital items, but people that want to attend should also be able to walk around and hear that, informal conversation occurring, so they hear some collaborative effort is going on. It doesn't need to be around, a table like this where, there's sides to the table.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be that formal.
The community deserves the hope. They've been kept in the dark for too long, all of us have, and I think that you're right, listening to what can be a collaborative effort. Everyone that is here representing that community and everyone that sits around that table deserves to know what is happening and provide the hope that is needed for that area.
And just so that we're clear, that the city is not now coming in and trying to be a part of the project because there's money. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that the city has always wanted to collaborate. I ran because I thought the city was stopping the community from advancing. This is why I'm sitting in this seat. And so as a member of this elected body, I want everyone to know that the city is not trying to insert themselves because we want some of the money, we want some of the, that's not what's happening right now. And
Nor is the state. I mean, we just understood that there was, this disagreement or this divide, and we had the desire and the will to help the community in that center. And so there's a level of frustration on our part that we're at this logjam, and we want to break through it. I'm very hopeful. I think hope is the right word. I think we can get this accomplished. And I think the next meeting will be a step forward. And if we can devise something that's a win-win for both sides and everybody's comfortable with it, that would be real good. So I'm going to take off. I just want to apologize to Mr. Jefferson because I want you to know that I asked for a summary of how capital money was distributed and what the conditions associated with it were. I read it myself, and I asked that it be sent to you directly. And I guess it didn't get sent, but it's going to get sent. It's a public document. I mean, anybody could go online and see it. But it very specifically stipulates what is required of capital money, what are the limitations, what it can be used for and what it can't be used for. And, that was to clarify, I guess, in the minds of some, that the money could be used for things other than capital, and it can't be. Okay. Okay, well.
We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate your time.
Yeah. Have a safe drive back.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you
Yes.
very much, I appreciate it. Nice to meet you all.
The mayor has a gift to Secretary Hall.
Oh,
You can't drive all the way to Hagerstown and not get a
yeah,
present.
not yet.
And you actually showed up right on time, by the way, just so you know.
disappointed.
So, everybody that came for this subject tonight, thank you very much.
Yes.
The rest of the meeting's boring, you certainly don't have to stay for it, but you're welcome to do so.
Get out. Go out there. This is gonna get more messy, and I am not. I just want y'all to know. I sent a letter of resignation, setting fire, because I'm not. I don't want the community.
Thank you, guys.
This is gonna be bad.
All right, up next, we have the transient housing ordinance. You have Kathy Moore and Paul Falk.
It'll take me 30 seconds. Go ahead. No, I really want to.
So I'm going to try to make this a little exciting since, we've been told it's been a little boring.
Oh, yeah, no offense.
Poor Chris, that's why you laughed. That's okay.
This is great, too. He said we'll make this exciting because Kristen said everything was important. Sorry, Paul.
That's
I'm
okay.
back in the game.
So, wanted to talk about the transient housing ordinance here. We had received some feedback from the mayor and council on September 20th, and we drafted an ordinance based on that feedback and just a summary of what the ordinance will cover. So the definition for a transient housing facility is going to include any hotel, bed and breakfast, and short-term rental. As discussed before, the Dagmar was classified as a hotel backed by the city through a certificate of occupancy back in the 80s, so it would be classified as a hotel in this. It does not include shelters. It just includes hotels, bed and breakfasts, and short-term rentals. Also, we created a definition for calls for service and calls for service room ratio. As discussed last time, it was decided at 0.95 as being that, basically rounding up to 1 from that. So the ordinance identifies it as 0.95. The calls for service would be a written report is how it would be done. So if something was written by a police officer, firefighter, CRS, or code official, that would be a written report that would be determining the calls for service. So if a hotel received a call for a undesirable in the lobby and the police were responding to something along those lines, that would not be counted against them. That would be removing of an undesirable at their location. Also, that we include in the definition for a hotel that it was a transient housing facility that collected any of the Washington County Hotel Motel tax. So that, again, that includes some of those ones that we were talking about previously with the hotels, such as the Dagmar. It would include them because they do collect hotel motel tax. We established a tier system for premise, identifying as a hotel and a fee structure for the transient housing facilities. A tier 1 hotel would not have any fee. A tier 2 would have a $500 annual licensing fee. And for our knowledge, based on the calls for service in 2021, that we would have 7 Tier 1 hotels and 6 Tier 2 hotels. We also established an inspection schedule for transient housing facilities. The Tier 1 would have the fire department by the fire marshal's office performing their annual inspection that they currently already do. And then the Tier 2 hotels would have a fire marshal inspection and also a code inspection annually to go through every room and every space of the transient housing facilities. We're also going to require that transient housing facilities train owners, managers, and all staff on human trafficking activities and how to spot victims. This is consistent with the state law that was passed that went into effect in October. And then also training for overdose response program that's provided by the health department. This is something that they had asked that would be in the ordinance. Also, it's requiring a guest registry where the guest registry for the hotel would collect the name, any vehicle tag information, the number of people staying in a room, the method of payment, and also the dates of occupancy. The registry would have to be kept for 2 years on the premise, and it could be checked at any time by the police, fire, CRS, or code departments. Also, some premise requirements where there'd be no hourly rates. That's not letting a room more than twice in a 24-hour period, that no room can be used for an illegal purpose, and then they would actually post the Planning and Code Administration Department's main office number in all guest rooms, any of the hotel facilities. So if there was a concern that a guest wanted to have that was traveling in the area, they could report that to our department for us to investigate. Also, establishing criteria for denying, suspending, revoking applications or licenses, which also includes the review of real property taxes, personal property taxes, and city-owned utilities. Also, any failure to comply with the ordinance requirements will result in municipal infractions. Suspended licenses will not permit additional transient housing units to be let, and revoked licenses will require the premise to be vacated until the violations were abated. And then also we incorporated in the transient housing requirements in Chapter 65, which is the habitual offender ordinance, which just means that after so many offenses, they could be charged with, the owner of the property could be charged with a misdemeanor. And Chapter 95, which is the excessive use of city services, that after they pass the threshold of what we discussed last time, 60 calls for service in a 12-month time period, that they would also receive fees for each time over 60 calls for services. So the 61st call would receive a fee, the 62nd would receive a fee, and so forth in a year's time period. And they remain a chronic nuisance property for a period of a year. Those were the ones that we discussed the last time, and we drafted the ordinance based on those recommendations by the council. Do you all have any questions for Kelly? You have anything else to add? Okay.
My only question is, we just talked a lot about transparency, right? Has this been discussed with the hotels? And if it hasn't, how do we plan to let everybody know that this is going to occur?
So we have communicated with several of the hotel owners to let them know about the ordinance in September. We did provide a draft one recently, then we got some feedback about where where undesirables would be in the property, if that would count against them for calls for service, and so I was clarifying that.
Okay. I definitely think we don't want to surprise people. No one likes that as a business owner, even if it's something that is going to improve the things that we need. So we have to make sure, and emails aren't, always read, or letters aren't always received. So however we plan to get this information out, I think is really important to make sure that it's well known that it's coming. I mean, I'm okay with it, but that's just my request. Please.
Do you guys have any questions or suggestions? Good with it?
We'll put on for introduction for next week.
I'm good with it.
Thank you.
Is it too quick to be introduced next week if we have not done this reach out that Councilman McIntyre is asking about?
I mean, it's quick, but it's also necessary. I just think that we have to make that concerted effort to make sure that they know, however that, and whether it's an email, a read receipt, I don't know what the answer is. But I know with communication, it can be challenging. Whether that's an in-person visit from some of the individuals that are allowed to get the information, I don't know, something. Because not everybody's watching this meeting right now. I don't think.
You don't think?
I mean, I think that I think it's a necessary move, is what I'm saying. I just think that, it's important to figure out a very quick, swift way to let everybody know. Email sounds like the easiest way, but we don't know if that's going to, people can be like, I never got the email. I don't know.
Good with it? Good?
Yeah, I'm okay with next week, introducing it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, see, that was kind of exciting.
Long time coming. All right, Hagerstown Fairground Softball Association loan request for grading and fence repairs. Hi.
We just talked about transparency.
Hello, how are you?
Good, welcome.
They have not seen it today.
We're here to discuss the Hagerstown Fairground Softball Association request for a loan from the city of Hagerstown. We're with Mike Kelball, who
Hey, Mike.
turn it over to him in a moment. The Softball Association has a long-term lease with the city. They manage the fields at the fairgrounds and have for a number of years. They have a current lease that goes on, expires in 2023, but then has some additional years to it. In the past, they have borrowed money from the city, had loans before and paid them back. In fact, they just recently finished paying the one loan for lights, field lights and fencing and dugouts. And so they're requesting here a $20,000 loan for field grading and for some fence repairs. So I'll turn it over to Mike, and he can introduce himself and tell you a little bit more about it.
Sure. Thank you for allowing us to come. I'm Mike Kelbaugh. I'm the president of the Hagerstown Fairgrounds Softball Association. We've had a lease with the city since the fairgrounds was built from 2001. And over a period of time, the infields at the fairgrounds, they wear and tear where infielders stand, play, the holes that are created. They need it laser graded. So this year, we want to laser grade all the fields to level them all off. It also helps in rain delays and things like that for tournaments too. When the fields are graded properly, they drain a lot better. And then also with the fencing, some of the fencing that was put into the fairgrounds over a period of time, players falling into it, balls hitting to it, it divvies, it starts to look bad, and we want to start replacing that.
Eric, what's the city park project that would not occur in FY '23?
We had $25,000 funded for, or budgeted for some additional Christmas improvements this year, and we just didn't get to it. So we're going to take $20,000 out of that
Okay.
for the funding of this.
Thank you.
Yep.
We're
We're still having Christmas.
Eric's canceling
We're still having lights.
Christmas.
This is not having enough
Eric's
improvements.
canceling Christmas.
We didn't cancel Christmas.
Christmas.
It didn't happen.
Halloween's bad enough.
Are you guys are good with this?
Yeah, it's fine.
Great. So what we'll do is that the attorneys will drop an agreement, we'll bring that back to council for approval, and that'll be hopefully in December, maybe January.
Thanks, Mike.
I
You bring a
appreciate
lot of people
all that
there,
you do.
man.
Yeah, it's
You bring a
it's
lot of
fun.
guests there, thanks.
It does bring a lot of guests there for the tournaments, and
Yep.
Kristen knows, I've talked
Fill
to
the
Kristen
hotels
many
and
times.
motels.
You do.
We're
We
filling the
appreciate you.
motels, and it's a good thing for Hagerstown.
Yeah.
And we started using City Park last year, so it's gonna put people in there too, and
Christmas won't be.
But-
we just need more motels.
Since you mentioned City Park, we'll probably come back with an agreement. The Senior Softball League has decided not to continue their agreement over at City Park. So Mike will probably be taking that over, working on an agreement with our attorneys. We'll bring that to the council hopefully in December or January also.
Thanks for what you do.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Somewhere else, are they running out of?
I'm not, they don't have enough, I don't think they have enough people to maintain the fields and stuff. I'm not sure they have enough players anymore when I talk to them, but definitely don't have enough or volunteers to help maintain. So that's where they're struggling with. And so, of course, the city's about ready to break ground on the new bathrooms, restrooms that are over there at the train hub, which will help. So if Mike takes over the fields and the maintenance and programs it more, and the bathrooms would certainly be a big help for that too. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Hub City Garage parking deck, land acquisition. Hi, Rodney.
As a follow-up to our parking study that we did some time ago, where we talked about constructing a third parking deck and discussed different sites, if we want to move forward now with the site that was selected and we focused in on at 50 West Antietam Street, in the packet is the sales agreement with Hager 5 to purchase their .88 acre parcel just beside District Court on West Antietam Street. Some of the highlights of the agreement is that the sales price is $1.2 million. We believe that there'll be at least 100 different users that use the deck during the day, probably more than that. This will be convenient parking for the new stadium for maybe about 20% of the potential users at the site. The city will provide alternate parking for the people that are already parking there during construction. We'll put them either in the district lot across the street, University District lot, or in the Rochester lot. And maybe the most important thing is the last bullet in the memo is that we won't close on the land until after we obtain construction bids and you decide if you want to award a construction contract. So by approving this agreement, we still have an out that would come once the construction bids are received, and we can decide then if this is a project that indeed is a go. My goal is to try to get the contract out to bid here in a few weeks, and we do have some alternates in the bid that we're putting in there. One that we're considering is taking a level off the top of the deck, would be a deduct alternate. That would be probably $1.5 million in savings. To go from 395 spaces total down to 313. But all those things can be decided when the bids come in and we see where we stand within our budget.
So, speaking of topics that you get discussion before you get to this discussion, did we add the last bullet point in there?
Yes.
So that was a protection for us?
Protection for us, yeah.
Okay, so.
Just because I don't know what construction prices are.
Right. So what'll happen is they'll continue to lease the lot to their current tenants until that time.
Yeah.
The alternative is we would take ownership now.
Right. I just feel like with the way construction volatility is, pricing is, that we should wait until we get the bids, till we make that decision.
So I'm just trying to think in my mind, let's say we wait to buy the property. And let's say that the bids come back and let's say they're $14 million, right? Which is, I don't know, $4 million over what we would like things to come in at, yeah? I'm hard pressed to believe that there's going to be a council that is going to look at the direction that Progress is taking on a facility that's going to absolutely need parking, and even in spite of that number, say, no, we're just going to wing it and sort of, let parking happen where it happens.
Without a deck.
I just don't think that there's a reverse course. So when I'm thinking about that, there's not a reverse course, but we're going to wait till April to buy a property at roughly twice what we saw it appraised at, which is my primary concern. And I don't know what the revenue is, but then we lose out on that between now and April. I don't know what that number is.
It was like 40 or 50,000 a year, I think.
Right.
Is what they make off of it.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not much in the grand scheme of things. I just don't see us saying, like I said, I don't think that there's any line in the sand for this project as far as the city's concerned. At least I haven't seen it in the entire time because we've sort of set every line and it's been crossed. We just have, it's just a reality and that's fine. And here's another one where, we looked at options and the only property that really makes the most sense to put a deck happens to be the one that specific partners own that are also associated with the stadium project that we now have to buy at almost twice the price. And what the public ends up losing out of that is the possibility that we may lose an entire level of deck because we've got to buy a piece of property at almost twice the price, which lowers our ability to pay to actually construct the deck. And I just think the public needs to have an acute awareness of that, and that's a reality of the purchase price that's being driven by the seller and not us. We have a budget, we're trying to live within it. We didn't have the ability to simply pay whatever we wanted to pay for whatever the sellers of property were selling to build the stadium. We have to live within those means, and so I think that's the part I'm going to struggle with the most. And I guess the $50,000 is really a wash, even though I can't imagine us, even if it comes in at 13 million, saying no at that point.
I don't know that you will either, but I guess we will. My goal was to try to bring you options on how you can whittle that price down. And the big one would be the top level of the deck.
I know.
But there's other things we can do too. Some of the aesthetics of the place and different things.
So, just so I'm understanding, let's say it comes in above what we have budgeted, and we have to lose an entire level of the deck, right? What we also have in this agreement is not only do we lose a level of the deck, and we pay more than the value of the property, but the other bullet point in here is while we're losing a level of the deck, we're also obligated to provide parking for existing agreements with parties that park in that lot right now, right?
Yes. And we're going to move them to city lots. So we will get
For
revenue.
now, but what happens when that one opens up? Are you saying that when that opens up, they automatically have the right to come back to this new deck? Or we can say, no, you've got to stay over at these other lots? Because I guess my concern is, let's say we go from 400 to 300 spaces. I'm going to use simple numbers.
Okay.
But then we've got to put 100 cars of people back in a deck that we've went from 400 to 300, right? So now we're down to 200 instead of the 300. Because we've got 100 we've got to put back in. Are we going to, through this negotiation, reserve the right to say, I'm sorry, 100 cars, but you've been parking in the University Plaza deck, or you've been parking in the A&E deck just fine.
During construction.
You don't get to automatically come back to this deck because now it is presumably going to be filled or overfilled because it's 20% of the parking we're even going to need to be able to facilitate that.
Well, and that's like, in the-
activity.
you know, a typical baseball game will be in the evenings, right? So we're looking at how can we get more parking in there during
Right.
the daytime to maximize, you know, the revenue for the deck itself. I think we can ask them, we can probably require them to come back to that deck. I think it's our prerogative to tell them which deck they can park in.
That's what I'm asking for.
Yes.
Is that we can
Okay.
keep them at the other
Sure.
decks.
Yeah.
Keep the other decks.
Yes, the other
not
decks.
this
That,
deck.
you're right, that, because that's, when I read this, it says like we've got to facilitate that. And I want to make sure
Okay.
when we say we're facilitating it,
It's up to
we're not
us.
guaranteeing anybody that they get to come back to this specific place.
Okay.
I guess that's my concern.
Okay.
That'd make me feel much more comfortable about losing an entire level of the deck
Okay.
by saying we also aren't filling it with 100 cars
That's a lot of cars.
when we've got, yeah, it takes up 33% of the deck if we've got to downsize it. That eats into that 20% of need.
But a lot of them will be playing market rate,
Right.
you know, fees, so that's not all bad.
Yeah.
No, as long as you can fill up the other places, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can make sure that we have basically, it's our say as to where they can park at.
Is this the final
I,
design?
I am still adamantly opposed to $1.2 million. I'm just putting that in the air, but.
Why can't we, I want to be consistent with
Yeah,
the art that we
Adamantly
have?
opposed.
Yeah,
We're like an arts
I'm
and
in a-
entertainment community.
Well, I mean, so those big banner type things that are on there, those are just placeholders.
Okay.
We can put whatever we want on there.
Okay,
Our logo.
good. I want our logo. I want
Yeah.
a G. I just want all Gs. Down the lane.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the logo
Yeah,
is
that
a
was,
G, we can put it on there.
it's,
It is a G.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry, Robin.
we should figure out what we want to put on there eventually.
Yeah,
That was
I-
just what the architect put on there is.
And I understand,
Just
but-
something to give the deck more character.
Right. I love the fact that there's something on there, but we're in arts and I mean, it's not it's our deck. It's not the,
Yeah,
you know what I
and
mean?
we
So
need to
in my
decide what-
mind, like, we have art.
Yeah, our own art.
Our own art.
Yeah, I totally agree.
That's just my parking deck
So
contribution.
I just maybe want to ask one more question
Good.
for the citizens that may share this curiosity, you know, because I know that, at least in my mind, this has been some of the thought process. Once you have a design for this deck and you go out and you see the numbers, right? Let's say this deck it comes back, and let's say it's 14 million. You say, hey, look, we got 10 million. That's what we got. And we say, you know what? The 1.2 million for this site, you know, really hamstrings that ability to go above and beyond what we're already going above and beyond. How fluid is the ability to look at a couple other empty lots in the vicinity? And I get that these other spots wouldn't be, you know, the perfect place, but how mobile is that plan to say, you know what, if we took that over, we could still build this garage over on that empty spot. We wouldn't have to pay 1.2 million for that spot, and that spot might, you know, be a different cost. How mobile is the
I think
design?
parts of it are mobile. You know, we've done a lot of work with, you know, our parking equipment vendor, our security system vendor, elevators, all those kind of things. That part's mobile. But the actual design, the deck is site-specific to that lot size. So we can get so many parking spaces in per level and those kind of things. That's not mobile. That would have to get
Right.
redesigned. But we wouldn't be starting from scratch either. So it's kind of a halfway in between, I guess I would say.
So some other lot that's free that may not be as optimal, but is still accomplishes providing parking within the walking vicinity of what we're trying to accomplish.
It's possible, sure.
Okay.
I will say from our soil investigations of this site, which is often where you have a lot of your cost, is what's under your feet. It looks like we have competent soil there, competent rock to build this on, and we haven't found any environmental issues there. So I feel good about that, and we've done a lot of drilling over there to make sure that we're in good shape there.
Well, good. That's always a good sign.
It is a good sign.
You guys good?
Yeah.
Up next, we have public art on the city-owned land north of Park Circle and the proposed closure of Summit Avenue at CSX Rail Crossing.
Okay, before I start, I'll recognize Toby Mendez is here, the artist for Clara Barton Monument. And there's some other folks here in the audience from that neighborhood too, and from the public meeting we had, which I'll get into in a second. So in addition to the Clara Art Memorial that'll be placed there in 2023, we talked before about having additional art in that triangle. So to facilitate that, we had a public meeting out at the site in July. Several of you were there. It was actually very well attended, and I thought we had a constructive evening that night. A summary of everything that was talked about that night is in your packet, but you could really boil it down to the community felt strongly about two things that we could project as additional art in that area. One was the bookmobile and the Mary Tipkins initial idea to have a mobile bookmobile in this community, for one of the first ones, I guess the first one in North America. And then the other thing is the being the hub city and the trolley system that was here, having something that is a artistic approach to recognizing that history. So those were kind of the main things that the public said that night that they'd like to see, kind of in a, not a literal like trolley sitting there, not a literal bookmobile, but some sort of art that pays homage to those things, and that's really up to the artist to present to us. So the plan that we're proposing is in your packet, and it looks like this. And basically, it shows the Clara Barton Monument, where we've always discussed it, along Summit, Virginia Avenue. And then also, you'll see in there, item E, which is potential trolley monument or feature. And then items B, there's a B1 and a B2, potential bookmobile interpretive panels. So that's kind of the recommendation that we got from the community, is to do something along that nature. If you want to move forward with that, what we would do is a call for artists to develop ideas for what art we would have there. We would do that through the Arts Council. We'd have our Public Art Commission shortlist it down to 2 proposals. We'd pick one, and then we would apply for a Public Art Across Maryland grant. Just a few years ago, those were $5,000, now they're $50,000, and you could do something significant there for $50,000.
Wow.
And I think we have a really good shot at getting that because they paid for the planning process. I'm sure they're gonna pay for the implementation. So I feel pretty positive that we would get that money, and there's no match. And if we could pull all that off, then possibly at the end of 2023, we could have this implemented. So if you're okay with that process, or if you have if you feel more partial towards like the trolleys or the bookmobiles, it'd be good to hear that. Otherwise, we'll do a call and see what the artists come back with.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm good with it, and I love the fact that you were able to get the neighborhood first groups to participate. I mean, I think that was brilliant, so thank you for doing that.
It was a
Yeah.
great turnout.
Yeah,
It
that's
was a really good turnout.
fantastic, yeah. I love it.
Yeah, I was at
I'm
the
fine.
July meeting, and again, I love the presentation and the engagement of the community to say, you know, you have a sticker, you place a sticker on what you want to see
Love
here,
it.
like art or some type of representation. So that exercise is perfect to get everyone's buy-in and pitch in. Again, this administration is very geared to getting community feedback.
Yeah.
So we don't have to make decisions by ourselves. So
This
that was
is-
a great meeting.
yeah. Excellent.
So the next part of that then, and we'll proceed with that plan, if that's okay with everyone. The next part of that is Summit Avenue at the railroad crossing. I've received yet another request from CSX and Maryland State Highway Administration if we're interested in closing Summit Avenue at the railroad crossing, and they're offering us $40,000 to do that. $40,000 is probably what it would take to do a good job of closing that crossing. So it'd be pretty much a wash on that. But when we brought this up at the public meeting, one reason I want to mention this, it did seem like the community was generally in favor of that idea because it would potentially limit the amount of traffic on Summit Avenue, minimize cut-through traffic on Summit Avenue, and hopefully slow people down in this vicinity. If we wanted to do that, we'd have to foster a whole lot more public discussion about that issue. But I guess I just wanted to touch base with you to see if you're interested in exploring that further, or if we just want to set it aside for now and see if they keep offering us more
But
money.
you think it would be helpful? You're the engineer.
Well, from a traffic engineering part, I guess I'd never like to see us close roads, but it doesn't really, I don't think it would really have a negligible effect. It would have a negative, it would not have a negative, is that, I can't say
Negative
double
effect?
negative.
I got you.
It would not have a negative effect on the flow of traffic in the area, and I think maybe it does have some merit.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think that it's
But I
worth
think we'd want
exploring.
to survey the neighborhood,
Yeah,
see what kind of
absolutely.
feedback we get.
Absolutely.
And then go from there.
Yeah, that's fine with me. What?
You live there.
I lived there.
Do you want, right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you both do. You can talk, yeah, y'all can come to the public meeting.
We have, and we will.
You can come to the closing.
And then the last thing, Deb Kepler is here. She lives on South Prospect Street. She recently purchased the trolley barn. Her and I have had some discussions. The trolley barn is right at the corner of Summit and Lee. And Deb has found some of these great old pictures of the trolleys that are in your packet. They're black and whites that look like this. Her and I were talking about if we could get these mounted on PVC like the faces of Hagerstown are along the Cultural Trail. Lee Street is the cultural trail in that area, so on the north side, on the trolley barn, we would mount these photographs of the trolleys running through Hagerstown. The proposal is that we would pay for that, it's about $2,000, $2,500, we would own them. She would allow them to be mounted on the building, and she would also provide lighting on them. And it would be a nice addition, I think, to the cultural trail.
I love that idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Pearly Thomas.
Thank you.
It's a Pearly Thomas.
Huh?
That's the trolley.
What
It's a
about it?
Pearly Thomas.
Oh. Okay, yep.
You know, that trolley is sitting right now outside the Hagerstown Railroad Museum up on Burhands. I know we took a shot at that trolley, maybe 3 years ago?
Yeah, I went and talked to them.
Yeah, and, you know, maybe it might be something to try to take a shot at it again.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously, you know, in Myersville, we rehabilitated trolley 150.
Yep.
It took us about $150,000. We put it inside the library, you know, and it, you know, people like it a lot. That's the only other one left. There's one that somebody uses somewhere as like a, you know, cabin or, but that's the only other one left. And yeah, I think that, you know,
I think it would look cool.
Find a good home for it.
Yeah, yep, and people would see it. We can do that.
On
See
the,
what it costs.
Yep.
on the art proposal, do you have a preference towards something about the trolleys or the bookmobile or anything else?
I like the bookmobile. but-
I like the Kim Craft idea. That's just me.
Yeah, I did too. Didn't seem to be the public's idea.
So the Chemcraft, during World War II, you couldn't get those chemistry sets the kids play with because they were mostly manufactured in Germany. So then two individuals opened up the first chemistry set, toy maker set in Hagerstown, right around the corner, across from the trolley barn. And he sold them for decades, and then I think he got bought out by, you know, one of the big toy companies in New York. But it started here. We had the first chemistry set that was sold in the U.S. All I'm saying is,
That is so
if we're
cool.
going to like direct our parks, and especially the pocket parks, into these more of like memorial-oriented ideas, I don't have any issue with that. I just think that we can like incorporate some of our past successes
Make it
in a more
educational.
interactive
Yeah.
way into them.
Yep.
Whether it's a bookmobile or the Kim set or the
What a
trolley
proud thing. That's
the Dagmar, you know, the vehicle, like any of those things.
Right. And that's the goal with this new art project.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a
Do you guys have a preference, bookmobile or trolley?
I don't.
I don't have a preference.
Okay, we'll see what we get back from the artists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was exciting too.
See, Kristen, you don't hear exciting agendas, do you?
Toby wants to.
Yes.
Oh, wait, now.
Actually, it wasn't in regards to Clara Barton, but one of the things I thought was interesting at that public meeting is directly across the street of Summit, where you have the trolley, is Titcomb's home. Her first name, I forget, Elizabeth or Mary Titcomb, which I thought was kind of interesting, that, you know, you might have a...
Mr. Burns owns the...
Yeah. Jim's the one that enlightened us on that.
And I don't know if you need the footprint for the trolley, you know, why the decision of, you know, one was placed at the top of the triangle and one placed right across the street from Mary Titcomb's home, but you might consider flipping those. I think it makes kind of an interesting segue where you have a monument to a woman in Clara Barton and then another acknowledgement of a historic woman from Hagerstown right there, and then the connection to her home across the street. Just a suggestion.
Yeah.
That's
Cool.
pretty cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Speaking of chemistry.
National Wastewater Sampling Initiative.
Here. Thank you.
Here, I'll pass them out.
We're going around.
Shelley was just curious what a muffin monster was.
I was.
I couldn't even keep a straight face.
I know, I heard
saying it
you like giggling, I was like, oh, God, I just gotta look at Kristen.
It's kind of, think of a garbage disposal in your sink, supersized. It grinds everything up so it can make it, so it can put stuff through the pipe.
Muffin monster?
Well, it looks like a big egg beater with a muffin on the bottom, right? So,
I mean,
They're very effective.
I'm so lost. You know what we're talking about?
sewer plant.
yeah.
I just want to take a minute and introduce Wendy. Wendy is our laboratory manager, and she's been with us for a little while now, first council meeting, and she's actually been doing an amazing job for us, and this is an example of one of the things that Wendy's worked on, and it's pretty cool.
So I just wanted to give everybody kind of a quick update and some information on what we have been doing in the wastewater plant and the laboratory over the last year. We have been participating in a couple studies that look at wastewater-based epidemiology, specifically targeted towards COVID. As we all have lived through that and want it to be over as quick as possible, the more data that we can get on it and provide to the community, I think, the better we will come out of all of that. So the first study, I'll kind of just quickly go through the ones we've been participating with since January. We kicked it off with Lumen Ultra, which was, they were the contract that NEWS, which is the National Wastewater Surveillance System, which is a program that the CDC employed to kind of monitor wastewater to see where these COVID levels were in our community. We partnered with them until their contract ran out. It specifically only looked at COVID. This summer, we transferred over to BioBot Analytics, which is associated with MIT. And they are, again, just looking at our COVID response in our community. Hopefully kicking off this month, maybe next month, we have been invited to participate with Wastewater Scan, which uses very much the same similar technology, looking at the viral particles in the wastewater. And this will be with Verily, which is a partner with Stanford University. This will not only monitor COVID, but it will also monitor influenza A and RSV, as well as monkeypox. As we've all probably heard in the news, RSV and influenza and COVID, they're trying to predict that it could be a little bit of a messy year with that. So any of the information that we can gather on the prevalence in our communities would be great. And the reason that monitoring wastewater comes in kind of handy, if you look in the center portion where the graphs are, that top graph, the dark yellow line is what the viral load looks like in wastewater. And the lighter yellow line that's a little bit lower is what the clinical case shows. So they've noticed with all of this research that the wastewater peaks kind of preceded the clinical peaks by about 1 to 2 weeks. So it kind of gave you a preview of what was to come in the community so that you can be better prepared. Public health officials can be made aware of, you know, you might want to make sure you've got extra testing kits or supplies for your nurses and doctors. So it is a great early warning system for us. The bottom graph is all of our data since June with BioBots. And you can kind of see the same trend line. I will point out here that the gray vertical boxes as well as the green trend line is the clinical cases and that how they were reported to CDC. And you can see that it kind of mimics, you can see the peaks come, the clinical peaks come slightly after what you see in the wastewater, which is the blue line. But you can also see that in August, those clinical cases stopped being reported. So we don't have that data through the CDC system anymore with the uptick in home testing and people just basically isolating and treating at home. We didn't have that, as much of that data in our information pockets. So the wastewater, as we continued on, you can see when the peaks happen, and we can kind of continue that preview of what's to come in our community. Wastewater, the technology is all free. All these studies have cost nothing to participate in. The laboratories reach out to us and they provide all the materials and the shipping. We just have to take a couple minutes and fill a sample out of the wastewater system. We send it back to them and then they give us the data back. The newest study that we're hopefully taking part in, they will actually reimburse us for some of the time and effort that we put in collecting the samples. So we will be able to recoup a little bit of funding back from that, hopefully. So it gives a good broad picture. It's unbiased. It's anonymous. So we're not targeting, certain groups or certain areas in the community, but we are available to give the big picture of the community, which is really what it's all about.
It's awesome.
Oh, yes. So on the back, that's all of the links are there for the data if you want to go take a look at it. The CDC website there, the first blue highlight, that is the National CDC data tracker, and you can go on and you can click on Hagerstown. We're actually on there, and you can pull up our data. The graph in the middle is what the CDC data now looks like. It's not those crazy graphs that we were used to seeing a year and a half ago. They now are reporting it based on percentage increase or decrease from the previous reading. So the more blue that we are, the better. So.
I think this is something we could get on the website too, so that people would have information for this, so we'll take care of doing this. Because this information is just fantastic to have. And I know it's appreciated. I've had feedback on how much it's appreciated, especially as, even though COVID, the pandemic may technically be over, we still have this information, along with the additional information on the flu, RSV, that we can use to forecast. It's a good forecast mechanism for the medical society. So.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your efforts in putting this together and putting a link for the protocols. I'm involved in science stuff, so I appreciate that.
Wonderful.
But it also just goes to show that science is real, and you can use the data for early detection to prevent a future pandemic in the future. So.
It will be interesting watching the curve because we're going into the holiday season. You can kind of see that we're on an uptick. And if history repeats itself, you'll see that line get steeper.
This is great.
No, this is awesome. Thank you.
Lots of hard work.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, last tonight we have the United Way Pathways to Hire follow-up discussion.
This is just an opportunity, we've heard two presentations from United Way. The second one was a little different. They had tweaked their program, and we do have allocated, I think, $425,000 of ARPA money that you all allocated for a program that is very similar to what United Way presented, and just like to get an indication of whether you all are still good with moving forward with this program, if you'd like to see changes in it, or if you would just like to look for another program for that allocation to go to.
I don't think this was the program that I envisioned that funding being directed toward.
Okay.
So I had a thought. We have that pot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we put it out, I don't want to say to bid, but like have an application period?
Okay.
Where nonprofits can send their proposals in or do a presentation like this, or, you know, we can sort them out first.
Like-
That would be nice.
Like, I think it's hard for me to wrap my brain around that funding, its purpose, and then have entities like United Way come in, they give the presentation, good presentation, in fact, tweaked it. You know, it was more directed toward the city, and the other group that came in, and I, for the life of me, can't remember what it was now.
The
but they
FS,
were-
the hub at FSU?
The college or the
they- Yeah, they were providing the service, and then,
Right.
yeah.
I think this is a great program. I just think if we're going to give us a substantial amount of money, so why not at least get applications to see if there's a better proposal? I don't know that that will be the case, but I think
Or
that it's.
multiple.
Yeah.
proposals,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
We can do that.
I feel like with that level of funding, it requires some sort of RFP process or distribution in a multiple organization effort.
Yep. We can do that. Fair enough.
All right. City Administrator.
Mayor. Okay. Just want to thank staff. This has been a real busy last couple of weeks, whether it be with everything we've done with, everything that was done with Halloween, with the new brand coming out and everything we've done for that, with the recycling event that was hugely utilized on Saturday down at the old stadium parking lot. This coming weekend, especially this coming Saturday, probably one of the busiest we've had in a long time, certainly since we've gotten out of COVID. On the 19th, everybody's noticed that we have the new Christmas, this year's Christmas tree down in the square. It looks undecorated, extremely nice, but it's going to be decorated, and on Saturday, we will light it up at 5 o'clock. Santa and Mrs. Claus will be there. There'll be cocoa, kids' activities, but before that and during that will be the Makers Market from 1 to 7, featuring handmade vendors. Cassie, do you know off the top of your head how many vendors we have? 30? Yeah, 30 vendors for that. So it's going to be really good. It's also in conjunction with Chris Kringle at the college, so it's good. You could start here, go out to Chris Kringle, come back, flip-flop those, but it's going to be a real nice event for everybody. And then, of course, the annual tradition, Holly Fest, is at 6:30, and that will be at the Maryland Theater. So kicking off the holiday season, we'll roll into City Park lighting in 2 weeks after that, I think. I think it's 2 weeks because we got Thanksgiving coming up after that, so it'll be the next week, the next Friday. So busy times. We're trying to make up for all the time we lost during COVID and get a lot of these things going again. And thank Brittany, Cassie, Jen Young, who is our new person in the office, helping both of them out. They've just done a great job. So that's it for me, Mayor.
Councilmember Martinez.
I just want to say congratulations to our new governor-elect, Wes Moore, and Aruna Miller. And also congratulations to Brooke Grossman, our delegate. And congratulations to Senator Quarterman, and to the county commissioners. Yeah, just want to say congrats. And also, conflict in community. I think that it's important to know that conflict is inevitable. We all are going to have conflict. We're all going to be misunderstood, and we're all going to misunderstand. Communication is very important. I understand that we sometimes don't hear exactly what people's feelings and values are. So I would just say, keep having conversations, keep talking, keep dialoguing. It is always uncomfortable, especially once you're offended. It's hard to still be present after the offense, but after the offense comes collaboration. So just keep collaborating, keep talking, keep communicating. Thank you.
Councilmember Alshire.
Yeah, I think, I appreciate, certainly as a citizen, everybody that ran for office. I certainly appreciate more that it sort of went off without, hitches that I think the citizenry at large probably had concerns about. I think it was an amicable process, and probably just as much as most citizens, I'm thankful that it's over and folks are, moving on to getting work done. I feel like I missed much of it, importantly so. I just want to say that I'm thankful for all the folks that, with their medical expertise, were able to make my wife more bionic than she already is. So I know she's at home and getting better. Thanks for all your thoughts.
Councilmember Burnett?
I have one thing. The Wheaton Park project, we are requesting, again, for anyone that has photos or information about the history of the park. Currently still in phase 1, so it's important to have, old photos, people look in your old photo albums from back in the day, and if you have any information about just the overall feel of the park from back in the day, even to current times, and provide that information to Ms. Janice Couch or Ronnie Tissue before November 29th. This is the second extension. So November 29th, we're going to have a really nice panel or mural at the Wheaton Park to showcase the history of the park. So it's important, look in your old photo albums and provide information as soon as possible. Thank you.
Councilmember
I missed
McIntyre?
one thing.
Yeah, you both missed one. You missed two things, you missed one thing. Go ahead.
Are you telling I missed one?
No, you said you
Oh,
missed
yeah,
one
okay.
thing, and she said she missed two things,
No, I
so
just,
we can go
I
back.
I did. In the season of fall sports, I was remiss because I know my one daughter is just crazy about going to these events. But just want to say congratulations and good luck to Clear Spring
Yes.
High School Volleyball and North Hagerstown High School Volleyball in your state championship games tomorrow evening.
Very cool.
I just wanted to remind everyone that there's a community meeting tomorrow, Thursday, at the Parkside Community Center, which is Sumans Avenue. And it's continuing the conversation in Jonathan Street community. It is Thursday at 7 p.m. Right, Ashley is not yet nodding yes, so, okay. And also congratulations to Congressman Trump.
See, I can see all you guys over here, so I know what you're, I got you all figured out.
Mr. Williamsport boys football team.
Do you want to say one more thing?
No, I'm just trying to make sure I cover all the high schools because these kids work hard at it.
They do.
They're super stoked and
You good?
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so just two things. Mayor Keller and I had the opportunity to go and do the Operation Warm at Pangbourne Elementary School the other day. And while that was, very fulfilling and the kids were just so excited, I don't know if it has ever been, where they could not believe they could take their coats home. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. But one of the things that she and I talked about, and I brought it up before, is how many Spanish-speaking families we have in our community. And what I think that we need to do as a city is be more inclusive in that with our communications. And I don't know how, I am not bilingual, I have no idea how to speak Spanish, but I think that we need to work harder and figure out a plan in order to make sure that we are inclusive to a community that needs us to be more inclusive. So I don't know if that's an agenda item to put on, but it is something that we need to focus on.
How about we talk about it as staff and then we'll bring something to you
Yeah.
in the next few months?
I think that we all would agree that it's very
Yeah.
important, and our Spanish-speaking population is increasing, so whatever that looks like. And I do know that the website can flip to Spanish, so thank you very much for doing that. But I don't know if all of our communications, I think we need to do a better job with that
Okay.
somehow. On that note, and in congratulations, Madam Mayor, being appointed to Governor-elect Wes Moore's steering committee is a gigantic honor and well-deserved. You were phenomenal in his campaign, and I know that he values you and values our community because of you. So thank you. I think that you're going to do a great job for us with him. This next 4 years is going to be amazing. So,
Thank you very
and you
much.
can take some credit for that, I think.
Thank you, I appreciate that. That was your third thing?
That one, I took that one.
I also just wanted to thank the Hagerstown Professional Firefighters 1605 for Operation Warm last Thursday. They gave out 125 coats. Over the last 10 years, they've given out close to 2,200. And they're brand-new coats. Everyone gets one in their size, their favorite color, and it really is.
It's so fun.
It's so fun. The
So
kids
fun.
are so excited to get a brand-new coat. So thank them for doing that every year. And then I will see everyone this Saturday downtown for lots of festivities. Let's make it a really good event for those 30 vendors that are there. And with that,
Safe travels to the White House.
Yes.
thank you. I'm traveling to the White House. We're adjourned.
Of course you Can we all? I'm ready for a drink, so like, I feel like we should just.
Hello and welcome to Council Wrap. I'm joined by Wendy Webster Zanow, or Zanow?
Zano.
Okay, Zano. See, I knew I would mess that up, and hopefully that's the only thing I mess up during this, but it's great to have you with us. You're the laboratory manager.
Correct.
For the wastewater?
Wastewater and water.
Okay, wastewater and water. So
Yes.
you do it all, wear a
Yes.
couple of hats. And it's fascinating because I was listening to everything that was said during the meeting and these studies that you have been a part of. And that's pretty, it's pretty highbrow in that Hagerstown is one of not many in the entire nation to be part of this. Can you kind of give us an idea of where we stand in that elite company?
Well, in the state of Maryland, there's quite a few facilities that are monitoring down towards the city, Baltimore and DC. And I believe Cumberland is also monitoring, but I think that is pretty much it.
Yeah.
So us and Cumberland are the two in Western Maryland that are a part of this. You can see on the national map, if you pull up on the CDC website, everybody that is participating. It usually concentrates around larger cities, so it's good to have the profile in a still city, but more of a rural
Right.
area that we're in.
Can you describe this process a little bit? What is it that you're doing exactly in analyzing these wastewater samples?
So we just collect our normal samples that we process for regulatory purposes on a daily basis. We just partition out a sample and we send it away to a company that then will do the analysis for us. It is the RT-PCR. It's very similar to if you've ever had a nasal swab done for a COVID test.
Okay.
The technology is very much the same. They just amplify any viral particles that may be in the sample, and then they can tell us, is it present, is it increasing or decreasing between sampling events.
And you talked about how this is a process where there is really no discrimination because of the way that they're collected and everything that you sort of analyze. But my question is, in any way, is anything skewed because of waste that would come from a medical facility? Would that factor into this at all? How is that sort of parsed out, I guess, or is it?
Well, we have one wastewater treatment plant for the entire city of Hagerstown, so we do get all of that in combination. Some of the smaller communities that have several wastewater treatment facilities in their area, you can kind of see the distribution based on the area, and you can kind of dissect it down to that. But now it's kind of the big picture of what's going on in the city of Hagerstown.
And the cool thing is, I mean, you're talking out, you were throwing out some pretty big names there. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Also, I believe the Maryland Department of the Environment at one point had a hand in this to some degree. MIT, some big names there. And then this information being shared with the Washington County Health Department. how did they use, or how do they continue to utilize that, the information, the results, and the data?
So I send the weekly reports. We get them twice a week back from the companies, and I've been disseminating them to the health department officials as well as some of the city council members that are interested in seeing where we're at. I am not 100% sure what is being done after it leaves my hand, but I'm sure they're probably sharing it with the appropriate authorities.
And the interesting thing to me is, because I remember talking to Nancy and you know, having some communications with you back in August when we put out a press release on this at the time, something you had been working on, as you said. Now it's been, what, about a year, I think, since you first started on this?
Yeah, we kicked off January of last year, so
Okay.
we missed the last peak that where
Right.
COVID peaked last winter, but we'll see where we're at this winter.
And you talked about the predictive nature of these results. And I guess my question from there is, you can look at that, and that's fascinating, and it's amazing that we have something like that, which is sort of an indicator of what might be coming. But do you know whether that's been utilized in any way to determine what might be done policy-wise within the county? And again, I'm asking a question that might be Washington County Health Department related, but do you know how that information may have been utilized, other than just being able to look at it and seeing those trends?
I am, again, not certain as to what that would be. I would anticipate that it is very useful information that they could provide to people that need it.
And when you talk about where this information is located, is it, I remember I believe the website initially had to do with COVID specifically. So are there others at this point, or is there just the one where people can kind of go and then drill down from there?
Right, so the first two studies that we participated with sent everything to CDC. They sent us an individual report so we could see just us, but everything was also loaded on the CDC's website, which you can look on the map and pinpoint Hagerstown and see it visually that way. The newer studies that are coming out with influenza A and RSV, those will also have data availability. I'm not real sure what that's going to look like, but I would assume it's going to be very similar.
Yeah, and so the samples that you analyze then, and take me through the process. You analyze the sample, and then how do you provide that information to those who are interested in the information, the ones who have sort of underwritten these studies to some degree? How do they receive that information? And I guess part of my question is, what's the difference between providing information as it might be COVID related versus like the influenza or the monkeypox?
Right. So we don't specifically do the testing in our laboratory. We send it out to one of these labs that have the PCR equipment and the ability to do that.
So they do what they need to do on their end.
They do all of the analysis, and then they send us back the snapshot of what they got.
And what's been, is this fascinating for you to sort of be on the cusp of something like this and doing this? I mean, I know in everyone's job that there are certain things where it's like it becomes routine to some degree, but then doing something like this, it would seem to me that there'd be a little bit of excitement with something like this. I mean, would I be on the right wavelength in saying that?
Absolutely. My background before coming into water and wastewater research in the laboratory, I came from a background of infectious disease research, so it is very exciting to me to see something like this be very available. It's fast turnaround data that we can provide to the public so that they are aware of what's going on in our community.
Yeah, to me, it really is fascinating, and you can see those trends in the data. I mean, and again, just the predictive nature of that for something, and again, I think when we go back to COVID-19, there was so much that was unpredictable about that, and continues to be with the different strains and everything that has come along. And when you start going to the influenza, we've seen over the years the way that has changed over a number of years. So I feel like this work that is being done in collaboration, but starting right here in Hagerstown, is really something that is tremendously important not only to our local population, but population as a whole.
Oh, absolutely. I think not only in providing that snapshot to our community, we're also giving those research samples and products to companies that are going to continue to enhance the science and make it better and make it more accurate, and then they're able to expand it to different strains, different diseases. I think there's a real future in this science. The possibilities are unlimited.
Anything that I haven't asked you that you think might be important for the public to know about this, this process and where we might be going with this potentially in the future?
I would say just to kind of, if the information gets out there, I mean, there will be those people that are curious to look. It provides information to an individual if they are an immunocompromised person or, you know, whatnot, the proper procedures that they might want to take if we do see a peak happen in the future. But the more information, the better in my eyes.
Yeah, I think it just creates a lot of understanding, especially, again, when you go back to COVID-19 for something where we were learning. We were in a process of attempting to learn. We continue to do that at this point in time. But this has been, I think, something where you can look at something tangible and say, look what this is telling us on the whole. So, yeah, fascinating to me, and appreciate you spending some time talking about it a little beyond the meeting here tonight. Certainly appreciate that, Wendy.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you to all of you for watching, and for now, that's a wrap. Wes Decker saying so long for Council Wrap, this time from the city of Hagerstown.